thinking about it. I've been thinking about all the things you do.
Hey fellow foodies, it's Faye from facefood.com, and today I'm going to show you how to make this chocolate Yule log cake. Alright, so we want to start with some egg yolks that are at room temp, and I'm just going to begin to whisk them all together. And then I'm going to gradually add in some granulated sugar, making sure to continue to whisk as I'm doing this. And once all the sugar is in there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just continue to whisk this for a few minutes until it becomes lighter in color. It's going to become kind of a whiter color, and it's going to become a lot thicker. So what it should look like after you whip it for a little bit is it will kind of look like a custard or ice cream, like soft serve ice cream. Let me show you what I'm talking about here. You can see it's significantly lighter in color. It's no longer yellow, it's kind of more white color, and it should ribbon like this. Okay, that's what we're looking for. So once you reach that stage, you can move on to the next step, which is we're going to add in some melted butter. And you want to be sure that the melted butter has cooled a bit after you microwave it and melt it down. So you just want to whisk that all in there, and then once that's incorporated, you can add in the rest of the ingredients, which is some vanilla extract, some buttermilk, and some cream cheese. You can also use just sour cream as a substitute for the cream cheese and buttermilk combination. And I'm just going to give this a nice whisk until everything is combined. And it's very important that all your ingredients are at room temp so that they properly incorporate together. Alright, so once that is all set, we can add in the dry ingredients all at once. And you can see that I moved it to a bigger bowl because it needed a bigger bowl. So now what you want to do is you just want to use your rubber spatula and gently fold the dry ingredients with the wet just until it's combined. We don't want to overmix it or anything. It will be very thick, kind of like a brownie batter, but that's totally normal. That's what we're looking for right there. Alright, so once you reach that stage, you can begin to whip your egg whites. And I do add just a bit of sugar with the egg whites because it just really helps stabilize them as they whip up. And you want to beat them to a stiff peak. They should be shiny and glossy. And I'm not gonna lie to you, I stepped away for a moment and they are just a little bit overbeaten, but not to the point where they're not salvageable. So if this ends up happening to you, you can see that it will still work out for you. You know, there's a certain point where you can't use them anymore, but if they're just slightly overbeaten, overwhipped, you can still use them. They're still salvageable, so no big deal. It happens to the best of us, you know. So what you want to do is you want to just fold in your egg whites gently and use the proper folding technique. And once it's all incorporated in there and folded properly, it will look something like this. And the reason why you want to fold properly is you don't want to deflate your egg whites. We want that air incorporated into this mixture. Alright, so now I have my pan. I have a half sheet pan prepped up. It is lined with parchment paper, and this parchment paper is also greased with some cooking spray, and it has some confectioner sugar on there, and that's just so that this will be easier to remove once we get to that step. So I'm going to just pour in all of our cake batter. And now I'm going to use an offset spatula to spread this as smoothly and evenly as I can. It will take a little coaxing, but you can do it. It will get done. Just got to be patient with it. So just try to keep on going into the corners and try to smooth it as evenly as you can. This is meant to be a thin cake, so don't be worried about if you think this is thin or not enough batter. It's the perfect amount of batter. It's the perfect amount of batter, and it is supposed to be a thinner cake because we roll it up, so that's perfectly normal. Alright, so once you reach the stage where you're happy with how smooth it is, how even it is, what you want to do is just give it a light tap on the counter just to remove any excess air bubbles. We're going to bake it at 350 in our preheated oven for about 10 to 12 minutes or until the cake springs back once it's touched. And then what you want to do is just take it out of the oven, and pretty much immediately what you're going to do is run your offset spatula on the outside of the cake. And what we're doing is we're trying to loosen the parchment from the cake just to make sure that this doesn't stick when we try to invert it onto our pan. And there are many ways to do this. There's a towel method, there's different methods, but for me this is by far the easiest way. I just like taking another sheet of parchment, I coat it with some confectioner's sugar, I flip the whole sheet on top of our cake, and then I take another baking sheet and I invert that so that the bottom is facing the cake, and then I flip everything all together. It's just super simple this way. Personally, I find it to be the easiest way. Of course, you want to be careful because the bottom sheet is the one that just came out of the oven, so it is very hot, but as long as you're careful, you'll be fine. So then you want to carefully peel the parchment off of the cake. And now what we want to do is just gently use the parchment to help roll this cake as best as we can and as tightly as we can without breaking it. The reason why you want to do this while it's hot and warm is because it's going to be more apt to bending, and once it cools it won't do this. So that's why it's important to do this pretty much right out of the oven. Just be careful, it is very hot, and you just want to be careful because it can still break. It is a thin cake, so just use your parchment to your advantage, and you'll be good to go. Alright, so once you roll it up, you want to make sure that the seam side is down so that it kind of flattens as it cools, and so that you have a seam set to go. So while that's cooling, what we can do is prep the filling. So for the filling, I have some cream cheese. You can also use mascarpone if you want to switch it up. And I'm just going to beat the cream cheese just to get it going. It's on a high speed. Alright, and once I'm happy with how the cream cheese looks, I'm going to go ahead and turn the mixer off and add the powdered sugar in all at once, and then put this on the lowest setting and give this a mix, making sure to scrape the sides of the bowl because this does tend to stick to the sides of the bowl quite often. So make sure to scrape, and then you can turn it back on to mix. So to this, I'm going to also add just a pinch of salt and then a bit of vanilla extract. I'm also going to be adding in some orange zest from just one small orange. And the reason why I do this is because it goes well with the filling flavors, but it also goes well with the chocolate itself. So I like adding that as my own special touch. Right, so once the orange zest is in, you want to just give this a good scrape down, a good mix, and then we can move on to the next step, which is you're going to be whipping up your whipped cream, your heavy cream. until it's whipped to stiff peaks. So I'm gonna just add the whipped cream now and fold that in gently. Again, it's a lot of folding, and you gotta be patient when you're folding. You wanna do this correctly, and it does take a bit of time, a little bit of coaxing. So that is our filling. You can see how delicious it looks, and it's ready to go for our cake. So now that our cake has cooled for a bit, you wanna gently unroll this, a lot more gently than what I'm doing here, because you can see mine did crack because I was a little bit rough with it. But I want to show you that even if it does crack, that's no problem, because our filling is going to act kind of like a glue at that point, where it's going to make sure everything sticks together. I'm just going to put all our filling, and there is like a little bit extra of the filling. I had to take out maybe half a cup, quarter a cup maybe. You can definitely use it all, but to me it was just kind of oozing out way too much, so I took about a quarter of a cup away from what was in the bowl. So just spread this filling as evenly as possible. You want to get to the edges, the corners, all that good stuff. And you can see that this recipe is really not complicated. It's just a few steps, but if you're, you know, prepped up with it, it's very easy to manage. A lot of these quote-unquote more difficult recipes, it's just about the prep work. So as long as your prep work is done, it's very easy to execute. So now you can see I'm rolling our Yule log up, and I'm actually using my parchment paper to do this. It's gonna help me roll this up very easily. You wanna go slowly. You wanna do this as tightly as possible. And again, we wanna make sure that we have a nice seam and that the seam side is down. You can see me scraping out that filling that I was referring to earlier. It was just a bit too much for me, so I scraped some out. Okay. Alright, so now that it is rolled up tightly, the seam side is down, what I want to do is I want to, I'm going to actually cover it with that parchment paper kind of loosely. And I'm going to put it in the fridge. Now, if you want to just put it in the fridge for about an hour or two, that will work. But I ended up putting it in the fridge overnight just because I wanted to work on this the next day. You don't have to do that though. All it needs is about an hour or two in the fridge. All right, so the next day, we're gonna work on our frosting. Again, if you wanna work on it the same day, that's up to you. So we're gonna make a ganache, a whipped ganache. So I have Ghirardelli semisweet chocolate. I love using Ghirardelli whenever I'm using chocolate in recipes. It's just the best for my, best bang for my buck, and it tastes delicious. So you can see I poured some hot, boiling, heavy cream over the top, and then I let it sit for about a minute. And then after I let it sit, I take my whisk and I whip it up just until it becomes this nice chocolate, basically. It's gonna look like chocolate. It's not gonna look like milk anymore or heavy cream. So then I add in some salt, some vanilla extract, and then I give that a mix. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to let this sit at room temp for about 5-10 minutes, and then I'm going to put it in the fridge for about another 10 or 15 minutes, and that's really going to help this whip up a lot easier, because you got to remember that this mixture is kind of warm at this point because we added in the hot heavy cream. And heavy cream will not whip properly if it's hot or warm, so we need to cool it back down so that it whips up properly. So this is what it looks like after it's whipped up. You can see it does get lighter in color, it gets much thicker, and that's what we're looking for. So all I did was I took that whipped ganache and I put it in my pastry bag, and I put it in the fridge until I was ready to ice this cake. Unfortunately, I don't have this part filmed coming up where I ice it. I don't know what happened to it, so I'm sorry about that. But all you're gonna do is you take your pastry bag, you just use your pastry bag to ice this Yule log as best as you can. Then you use your offset spatula to smooth the icing on there. And then I actually move the cake onto a cardboard just so it's a little bit more presentable. And once all the icing is nice and smooth, you can take your fork, and we're going to use our fork to make those indentations so that it looks more like a log. You want to be gentle at this point. You don't want to dig into the cake. You're just trying to make some nice you know, lines so that it looks like a nice log here. All right, so this is all we're doing. And once that is done, what I like to do, you don't have to do it, it's kind of overkill, but what I like to do is I like to cut off the ends, just trim them off. They're not as presentable as I'd like them to be. They're a little bit overstuffed, and it just doesn't look as nice to me. So I'm gonna just trim them off very gently so I get a nice clean look. And those will be the chef's snack, as they say. Alright, I'm going to do this to both ends actually. And this is our finished Yule log. You can see how beautiful it looks, and you can really decorate this and present this any way you'd like. You can get creative with it, and that's the fun part. Either way, this will look beautiful on your Christmas dessert table, and it's delicious. It's easier to make than you think. It just takes a bit of prep work, a bit of time, but it is doable. And you will impress your family, your friends, your loved ones, whoever you're going to have Christmas with. Give this a try. The full recipe will be on facefood.com. Like this video if you like it. Share it. Share it with any friends or family members you think that would want to give this a try. And subscribe to this channel for more great videos on the way. And I hope you guys have a wonderful Christmas, wonderful upcoming New Year. Of course, we'll have a video before then, but you never know. So I just want to wish you guys happy holidays. And you can see another way I presented it was I coated it with some powdered sugar just to give it that snow effect. So just to give you some ideas of how you can present this. But I hope you guys give this a try. And until next time, I hope you have a wonderful day.
You're down for. I wanna figure out to make it come around. No, we should quit the game and settle things right here, right now. I've been thinking about it. I've been thinking about all the things you do. I wanna take you from